Okay, so we're joined for another sculpture forum here, and I am delighted that we are going to be talking about an exhibition of work by Ken Price. Although I'm extremely disturbed that I did not see this exhibition. It was a scheduling issue. Um, so the exhibition was at Matthew Marks, and I am very pleased that Karen Wilkin did see this exhibition. Karen Wilkin, thank you for joining us. Karen Wilkin is a very distinguished historian, curator, critic, and author. And we're also joined by my regular compatriot, Jock Ireland. So just two people saw this exhibition who are going to talk about it. Rachael Bohlander, who is recording
Mhm.
this discussion and who will edit it and post it, has made. It looks like a quite stunning exhibition.
It was.
And I am a fan of Ken Price's work, and so I'm sorry to have missed it, but eager to hear what the two who did see it thought about it.
Mm.
Karen, do you want to start, or Jock, do you want to start? Should I pick?
Sure.
Karen, go ahead.
Well, I was very happy to hear about this show because you don't see a lot of Ken Price. There was a spectacular retrospective at the Metropolitan Museum, which is very fresh in my mind. It turns out it was 2012, so it was a while ago. That was organized actually. Um, I may have been the LA County Museum or maybe SF MoMA, I have to check. But it came to the Met where it was installed by Price's friend Frank Gehry in that strange little corridor gallery space in the 20th century wing, which undoubtedly has disappeared because of the proposed renovations. And I had seen the odd piece and was very intrigued, but I'd never seen a whole retrospective. And it was fascinating to see the evolution of the pieces that we now associate with him, these weird, ambiguous organic forms with the very complex and beautiful surfaces, colored surfaces, because he had started out um, making what seemed to be variations on useful ceramics. And there are some of them in this show, like it starts out as what looks like a mug, and then all hell breaks loose. There are a couple of those in this exhibition from the 60s. The other thing that really impressed me and continues to impress me is here is someone who comes out of the California clay tradition and isn't making ab-X clay. You think of Volkos and you think of these uh, uh, clay three-dimensional equivalents of gestural layered contingent imitation de Kooning's. Here's one of the transformed uh, mugs. So that fascinated me. And of course, the other thing is that he's been incredibly influential on younger artists like Kathy Buckley and Elisa Darigo, who are two much younger women who work in clay and are within this language of oddball structure and surprising surface. So I had a very good time at this show.
Yeah, I'm glad you referenced that Met show, which I did see,
Hmm.
Karen, 2012. And I was actually, my sense of that show was not the same as yours. I was actually disappointed in that show, and ended up feeling that in many instances the work had become too large and had lost a lot of its impact. Uh,
The
uh,
the largest pieces in that were the weakest. I agree with you.
Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
some one or two pieces had actually been put into bronze. I seem to recall.
I'd forgotten that. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I'd forgotten that.
But anyway, that's a little bit beside the point. I mean, I have the sense that some of those larger pieces were perhaps made towards the end of his life when he was not necessarily able to manage things as well as he had in the past. I don't know. Jock.
Yeah, and I sort of agree with it was a nice show, uh, very very nice, but I have reservations, and I have reservations about the surfaces. I have and reservations about the forms, the casualness of the forms, and it's not that Price is unserious, but he's kind of anti-serious. Karen has a show, or put together a show of Joseph Marioni at the studio school, works on paper, and that show is serious. Or Marioni was serious in a way that Ken Price is, and it makes clear to me anyway that this anti-seriousness of Price is different from Marioni's seriousness, and it's just, you walk into the gallery at the studio school now, and there's a sort of just a jolt uh, uh, of something. You wake up, you're hit by something, and it's a kind of seriousness, thorough seriousness that I I don't know, that kind of seriousness I found missing in Ken Price's work.
Well, Karen, since you've been put on the spot here, I think with what Jock just said about the show you just curated at the studio school, which I haven't yet seen and look forward to seeing,
Well,
um,
it'll be there for a while.
as
Uh,
being serious, and Ken Price here as being considered less serious.
um, I'm delighted that you are excited about the Marioni show, as I am. Certainly, Joe is an incredibly rigorous thinker, as well as, I think, a wonderful artist. So we're very lucky to have that show. Um, but I think, um, I mean, this is the literal apples and oranges, but you could also make a case for Ken Price being as uh, deeply involved in the specifics of his material as Joe Marioni was with uh, his materials. These forms are particularly the most recent ones, which are the most ambiguous ones with the most complicated surfaces. He's using clay for its clayness, its ability to respond to the hand, to be squashed, to be a primordial lump, which he is then shaping in ways that remind us of all kinds of things, body parts, things that are edible. And then he is painting them in a way which is deliberately at odds with the clayness of the clay. And I think that is, they're jewel-like, they're complicated. They don't look like anything in nature particularly, and they're can be mesmerizing.
Well, they don't. Sorry,
Hmm?
Karen. Sorry, Karen.
I think that difference between what he does to the outside and the infinite associations that these wildly ambiguous forms provoke, that tension is something that I think is profoundly serious, if you want to judge them in that way.
Yeah, I would tend to sympathize with that, Karen, and I would also say to Jock that playfulness and humor don't preclude seriousness, and in fact, I would argue that they are essential, and they are present in Ken Price's work. These Price works, the ones that we're focusing on, they clearly have reference, as you say, Karen, to body parts or forms from the natural world. And yet they are enormously ambiguous in terms of just exactly what, and whether they're sea creatures or, slugs, what, they seem to have a multitude of references.
A multitude of references, not always appetizing ones.
Exactly.
And that's part of what's funny about them. And there's also part of what keeps you looking, like, what is this? And, would I want to meet it on a dark night?
Yes, there's as you say, there's a tension between the luscious surfaces and a kind of almost distasteful form.
Yeah,
And
some of the forms are luscious and ominous or repulsive at the same time, but and that you could call that tension, and sometimes the tension works, but often this sort of uh, multitude of, or overflowing ambiguity is just confusion. It's not focused. It's anti-serious. That's my problem. I don't get a direct hit in the way that I get direct hits from Marioni, or there's just he's too relaxed for me.
Really, what
one
about
man's ambiguity is another man's confusion, obviously.
Yeah, well, right.
what about the craft involved in these things? I mean, there's a tremendous amount of experience and skill involved in the production of these works.
Yeah, way too much for me.
How do you mean way too much?
It gets in the way. It's and particularly the surfaces are uh, just, they sort of overwhelm the forms. I don't really feel that the surfaces are attached to the forms. Too much sort of sugar for me.
Well, I feel that you're expecting them to be something that were never intended to be.
Yeah, that's what's happening. I do. I want to take Ken Price out of California and bring him to New York City, and that's a problem for that's my problem.
I would say so. You I mean, yes, it's very much within a California tradition, and you can even, link him to the super surface people who were working with plexiglass and all kinds of things in a way that is totally his own and totally about the material he chose to work in. And
Yeah,
I don't think part of what I find interesting about the mature works, I was much less interested in the ones that were the transformed coffee cups and that kind of thing. Um, but these organic, unnameable things um, are so sui generis. I mean, they're just, yes, you can link them to somebody like ARP, but they make ARP look like a geometric sculptor. They're so weird and so mobile.
Yeah, I wanted to just say, you said the craft. I don't know what
Hmm.
you said, Jock, but the craft. Um, One of the things that I mean, I haven't seen the particular show, but in looking at Price's work in other contexts, I've been very aware of only sort of after being involved with the work, with a particular work for some time, did I begin to think about how did he do that?
Mm.
Um, I think the craft somehow or other is there. It's a tremendous amount of skill and, as I say, experience, but it's not in your face. I mean, it's not what you think about. There's no. I don't have any sense in engaging some of his works that there is any skill involved at all. I mean, the thing just seems to be there,
Hmm.
as if it's grown, as if it's produced itself somehow. And you're not. It's not a display of skill and craft, which you often feel, I think, in. I shouldn't say this, but in a lot of ceramic work.
Hmm. No,
Indeed,
I think that's a good point. They they just seem to have come into being. Um, but when you spend time with them and you start thinking they are clay, then you start thinking about the action of the hand on the clay.
yes,
But it takes
and
a while. It's not the
yeah,
first thing you think of.
yeah, and then you begin to think about the insides of these things because
Hmm.
they must be hollow, and he must have been able to build them from the inside out.
Well, some of them he gives you a way in.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Well, he left himself a way out, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
this is,
I think that's an interesting kind of aspect of the work is that for all that they are, ceramic works and involve, considerable experience to produce. That's not what they're about. They're not a display of they're not they're not performative in that sense, you know.
But
uh,
the surfaces are the colors. That's pretty performative, it seems to me. I think you're making a good subtle point about the forms and their sort of arrival. But the surfaces are sort of ostentatiously crafted or cared for, cared about.
Yeah, the surfaces are seductive and the forms
mhm,
are repulsive.
yeah, I think that's very deliberate. And there were some group of works on paper in the show, mostly early related to earlier work, and they were a little bit cartoony and often vulgar. And it was just playful and look what a bad boy I can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, tipping a hat to Richard Prince, and and
I
that
don't know why you have to categorize everything like that. Why
well
can't you
because
just take him
I'm
at his own?
overwhelmed by the there's conversation going on in the show among uh, sort of hip artists, uh, and these those that just I'm not I'm hearing this conversation with
Okay.
uh,
But
Richard Prince and all kinds of art world and healthy, humorous conversations, but I'm impatient with them.
Do you think that, say, the Volkos, for lack of a better expression, ab-X ceramics have more seriousness for you?
Yeah, for sure.
Why?
Just because they're limited. It's I'm confronting Peter Volkos when I see one of his contraptions, whatever you want to call them. I'm uncomfortable with the word ceramic. I see them as sculpture, and I have a direct uh, meeting with Peter Volkos in his sculpture. And it's more of a party with Ken Price.
You want some kind of sense of gravitas that is absent from this work, and I think
Not necessarily gravitas. There are all kinds of serious people that are full of this sense of humor or whatever.
playfulness,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
like Paul Klee,
sure.
But is he not serious?
No, of course, but he's Paul Klee. He's direct. It's pure clay.
Well, this is
This is pure price.
this is pure
Yeah.
price.
Well, right,
Yeah.
right.
What's your position on Frago now?
Oh dear.
Well,
Oh dear.
yeah, but even
Mm.
Fragonard is it's Fragonard all the way through. Uh,
Okay, but why don't you feel this is Ken Price all the way through?
well, there's too much ambiguity. Too many things are brought in, uh, and they're just not brought fully together. And maybe that the one we're looking at now is it's sort of trying to be uh, a figure, but resisting being a
I
figure.
don't think it's trying to be a figure.
Well, that I wish it weren't.
I think it's much more focused than that, shall we say?
Okay, well, I again, uh, it's that I wish I could see the focus.
Okay.
I have difficulty really, kind of knowing what it is you're seeing, Jock, or feeling, experiencing. Clearly, there's something about the work that is annoying you, I think.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
fair?
That I mean, it doesn't sort of reach the pitch of annoying, but I think it's sort of worth being a little annoyed by this.
Well,
Okay. All right. So
all right.
that's fair enough, Jock. I think that's fair
Yeah,
enough. So,
one can't argue with that.
no.
I would say that the ones that I'm most engaged by are the ones from the 2000s, from about, I think they start about 2009, the last ones in the show. And he died in 2012 or 13. So that's those last ones, the very this is earlier, which is really about the lumpness of clay. All right,
Mhm.
is that enough? I'm more interested in what he does later on,
Yeah, me too.
like this. Um, but it's a long pursuit. It was not, these were not arrived at casually or arbitrarily. That was very clear from the retrospective at the Met, although I do share your reservations about those last large works, which they were pointlessly large, I thought. But these hand-scaled ones I find convincing.
Yeah, me too. I didn't see these particular
Mhm.
pieces, but
But you've seen
in
others.
general, Yeah, yeah, yeah. I first saw some of those very early pieces that are related to functional cups and plates and jugs and things at a Whitney biannual way back.
Oh, yes, you're right. I'd
And
forgotten that.
and was really taken by them. I mean,
Oh.
they seemed to kind of be coming out of a kind of Bauhaus tradition of some sort and marrying a kind of constructivist feel to something functional and yet not functional, and I was intrigued by them.
Mm.
I do agree with you, Karen, though, that compared to the later work, they seem now relatively tame.
I'd completely forgotten seeing them back then.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, well, they stuck in my mind.
interesting.
And
Interesting.
I followed his work ever since.
Mhm.
So anyway, so that's it, I think. I don't think we're going to get Jock on board here.
I don't think so.
He'd
No,
like a series.
I'm very interested. You know, it was a fun listening to you all.
Is that it? Last words? Anybody?
I think that's it. I think
Okay,
that's it.
very good. Well, thank you very much.